The Sega CD was sort of short-lived, but it managed to bring us several excellent and fun RPGs. Some of these I was familiar with, but many I was not, and so I had to put some playtime in on several, and this is the order I found to be the least amount of fun and least impressive to the most amount of fun and the most impressive. These are the Sega CD RPGs, and today we start with Heimdall. I did not hear of Heimdall during the Sega CD's run, and it wasn't until years later that I saw the box art and said, that has to be a platformer or an RPG, right? Released in 1994 for the Sega CD, Heimdall is better classified as an action, adventure, puzzle, hybrid game with RPG elements. It was developed by the 8th Day and published by JVC. Originally released on the Amiga and MS-DOS, like a few other games on this list, this Viking-themed adventure was ported to consoles with added CD quality music and voice acting. The Sega CD was starving for content, and so this was pretty common practice. Throw some CD audio on it and ship it. Combining puzzle solving, exploration, and combat, Heimdall is a unique take on Norse mythology. Remember, kids, just because you were unique, it does not mean you were fun. This one isn't miserable, it's not Tracia, but it's certainly a test of patience. It's probably dangerous fair to give every rough game a pass just because it's not Tracia, so let's talk about this a bit. The story follows Heimdall, a demigod warrior that's tasked with recovering 3 stolen weapons of the gods: Thor's hammer, Odin's sword, and Frey's spear. This is all to prevent Ragnarok, and personally, I think this is an awesome premise. To accomplish this, he must assemble a crew and explore multiple islands filled with enemies, traps, and puzzles. Okay, it still sounds pretty good to me so far, right? The game's world is steeped in Norse mythology, and while it takes liberties with historical accuracy, it does a solid job creating a setting filled with mythical creatures, Viking villages, and legendary artifacts. So the question is, where's the issue? Well, we're getting there. Gameplay is divided into 3 main parts: a series of minigames, an isometric exploration mode, and turn-based combat. These minigames include axe throwing, ship combat, and pig catching. Yeehaw!
It's yodeling time!
While these minigames add variety, they can feel frustrating due to stiff controls and unforgiving timing. You know, actually, maybe the reason I don't like the pig catching sort of thing is that's a little too close to home. That's why I don't play Persona as a teacher. Once the adventure begins, players navigate a series of islands in an isometric perspective, searching for items, solving puzzles, and engaging in combat. Puzzles are a mix of item-based logic and environmental challenges, often requiring players to thoroughly explore each area for clues. Some solutions can be a bit obtuse, leading to a lot of trial and error. It feels a bit point and clicky at times like these, when I can appreciate that. Combat occurs when encountering enemies and shifts to a turn-based system where the player must face off against foes using melee or ranged attacks 1v1. The battle system is simplistic, requiring players to select attacks while managing health and stamina. While serviceable, combat can feel slow and a bit repetitive due to limited strategic depth and occasional difficulty spikes. Managing inventory and equipping the right weapons is absolutely crucial, as certain enemies are resistant to specific attacks. Visually, Heimdall looks pretty good, even bordering on impressive for a Sega CD game, with detailed character sprites and well-drawn environments. The isometric perspective gives the game a unique look, though it can sometimes make navigation a little weird and tricky. The soundtrack fits that Viking theme pretty well, I appreciate that, and the voice acting is present in some cutscenes, though it's sparse and it's of mixed quality, we'll say that, with some performances sounding overly dramatic or even monotone.
So it was that Loki cast a veil of enchantment over his mighty brethren. The evil one deemed that the forthcoming battle of Ragnarok lay too much in the favor of the good.
The cutscenes are what really drew me in, actually. The opening cinematic is super enjoyable, well-directed, and impressive. These sort of scenes are pretty common in Sega CD games, and I absolutely adore them. Even with its problems, Heimdall is an ambitious game that offers a blend of exploration and puzzles and some Norse mythology, so it's hard to beat that, right? However, its slow-paced, clunky interface and sometimes frustrating mechanics make it a game that's best suited for players with lots of patience. Those who enjoy classic adventure games and Viking lore may really enjoy it, but others may struggle with its dated design choices. If you've been watching long enough, you know that I'm rather forgiving most of the time, but Heimdall is one I wouldn't want to spend money on, that's for sure. To me, although it has some positive aspects, it sort of sucks, honestly. At least compared to every single other RPG on this list. Every game from here on out on this list is just considerably better. While this next game is a step above Heimdall in quality, I think the list just continues to get better and better. Better combat and presentation with an addictive gameplay loop puts us on the path to Dungeon Explorer. Dungeon Explorer for the Sega CD is a fascinating hybrid of action RPG and dungeon crawling adventure, sort of like Gauntlet and Diablo. While the name might suggest a simple delightful hack-and-slash dungeon romp, this game has a mix of fast-paced combat, RPG progression, and an attempt at a simple but serviceable story. Released in 1995, it was one of the later titles for the Sega CD. At its core, Dungeon Explorer is about gathering a band of heroes to stop an ancient evil from rising. It's actually a two-player RPG, which is really cool, but I couldn't get anybody to play with me, so... In Dungeon Explorer, you're trying to impenetrate this impenetrable tower to save the goddess of ambition, and this makes sense because, well, you know, you're ambitious. The story just doesn't reach the depth of the more narrative-heavy RPGs of the era. The game features a selection of different character classes, each with unique strengths and weaknesses, from warriors and archers to spellcasters. Combat is real-time, emphasizing dodging enemy attacks while dishing out damage with weapons and magic. While it aims to be fast and engaging, the movement can feel somewhat sluggish at times, and the hit detection isn't always precise. That can lead to some occasional frustration when facing multiple enemies in tight corridors because, hey, they are absolutely crammed in there like sardines. One of the game's strongest aspects is the RPG progression. Players gain experience points and level up, increasing their stats and unlocking better abilities. The town and shop allow for purchasing upgraded items and equipment, and this offers you some depth beyond just slashing through dungeons. And it's in this area that you can switch your character to another character, not even losing the other one. It's just back and forth. It's a pretty neat concept for the time, I think. Dungeon layouts can sometimes be repetitive, and the enemy variety is limited compared to other action RPGs of the time. There's a major sense of grind involved, and while that may appeal to old school RPG fans, it could be a turnoff to some players that are looking for a more fluid experience. Visually, Dungeon Explorer is likely to come off to many as a mixed bag, but I thought it looked pretty solid. The sprite work and environments are detailed, particularly the sprites. The real highlight, however, is the audio. The soundtrack is fantastic, featuring a mix of atmospheric dungeon themes and adrenaline-pumping battle tracks, all enhanced by the Sega CD's high-quality sound capabilities. While Dungeon Explorer for the Sega CD has its flaws, it's still an interesting and somewhat overlooked title in the system's library, feeling a bit like Gauntlet and Diablo meet Vampire Survivors or something. It's more addictive than one might have originally thought. Oh, and I don't want to spoil the ending, but man, it's kind of raw. It's kind of a raw deal on 2 of the 3 endings in the game. This next game has all the Sega CD cutscene loveliness that you've come to expect with the Sega CD, but it also includes some truly solid gameplay. This part of the list starts the, hey, I really wish I had a physical copy of every one of these games. This next game requires a solid investment of time, but I'm here for it. Let's look at Dark Wizard. First off, bully on that box art and title. That just checks all the boxes I need. Dark Wizard came out in the US in 1994. It's a tactical RPG developed by Sega itself that blends some raw strategy, an engaging dark fantasy storyline, and impressive voice acting and cinematics. Again, it is ticking the boxes for me. Despite checking boxes for lots of people, I'd imagine, it never gained the widespread recognition of genre-defining titles like Fire Emblem or Shining Force. Womp womp. Dark Wizard, however, is one of the most ambitious and content-rich strategy RPGs of its time. It has 4 unique protagonists, a vast world to conquer, and intricate turn-based battles. Thanks to its length and difficulty, it's quite a rewarding experience. Set in the war-torn land of Cheshire, Dark Wizard tells the story of a kingdom plagued by the resurrection of the demon wizard Velonis,
Oratrice mécanique d'analyse cardinale,
who was sealed away centuries ago. With the land overrun by dark forces, players assume the role of one of 4 heroes, each with their own story, motivations, and abilities. These heroes are tasked with defeating Velonis,
Oratrice mécanique d'analyse cardinale,
and reclaiming the kingdom. The choices include Armor, a noble paladin seeking to restore peace, Robin, a rebellious thief with a personal vendetta, Crystal, a powerful sorceress wielding dark magic, and Amon, a monstrous demon overlord who seeks dominion over the world.
One of these things is not like the other.
This variety adds replayability as each character has different units, starting locations, and endings, and that's pretty forward for a console RPG of its day. Gameplay in Dark Wizard is a mix of grand strategy and tactical combat. To me, think hexagonal Fire Emblem. Players move their armies across a freaking massive world map, capturing towns, recruiting soldiers, and managing resources. Battles take place on this hex-based grid, requiring careful positioning and mastery of terrain advantages. Unlike many turn-based RPGs, where combat is confined to smaller skirmishes, Dark Wizard feels more like an ongoing military campaign, demanding long-term planning and strategic decision-making. As an example, the first battle took me nearly an hour. That's insane. I loved it. Each hero can recruit various units, including knights, mages, demons, and mythical creatures. Units gain experience, they level up, and evolve into stronger forms, creating a rewarding progression system. The sheer variety of available units allows for different playstyles, but it also means you have to be cautious. Losing an experienced soldier will have you listening to Sinead O'Connor in a dark room, weeping into your pillow. Again, think Fire Emblem, right? Magic plays a crucial role with spells that can heal, damage, or even summon reinforcements, adding another layer to tactical depth. And as far as I could tell in what I played, casting spells cost no mana. What the flip? Look, being able to cast spells without a mana cost is like turning me loose in an all-you-can-eat restaurant. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again. And then I'm going to continue to do it until it hurts me and everyone around me. One of Dark Wizard's biggest strengths is its presentation. The game takes full advantage of the Sega CD's hardware, featuring fully voiced cutscenes, impressive anime-style character portraits, and a fantastic orchestral soundtrack. The voice acting, while occasionally cheesy, adds personality to the story, fleshing out the characters. And I am here for some cheesy voice acting. The cutscenes are amazing. Check this out. The world map and battlefields are visually detailed, though some of the sprite work appears simplistic compared to the contemporaries like, Shining Force. But it's okay. I love sprites of all sizes and all detail. This being said, Dark Wizard really is not without its problems. The game is notoriously difficult, with unforgiving enemy AI, long and grueling battles, and a steep learning curve. The learning curve is really the least of the problems, but it's no joke. There is a lot of trial and error. I'd encourage you, if you're emulating, use the rewind feature until you get it figured out. The interface requires excessive menu navigation to perform basic actions, and that's a little daunting at times. The slow pace of movement, both on the world map and in battle, can make the experience feel a little tedious, particularly for people who are unaccustomed to the methodical nature of strategy RPGs. Additionally, the lack of in-game tutorial means newcomers must rely on trial and error, or an instruction manual to understand the game's many mechanics. But if you're familiar with basic strategy RPGs, you'll know enough to get started at least. Even with these issues, Dark Wizard is basically the definition of a cult classic among strategy RPG fans. It's deep, and it's difficult, and the world building sets it apart from other games of its time. If you're willing to invest in its mechanics, it delivers an experience unlike any other on the Sega CD that I have yet experienced. Dark Wizard is a beast of a game, but it's a solid interest for me. This next game I have wanted for years, and I've basically considered it to be my holy grail on the Sega CD. And while I still enjoy this game, I'm just so much more impressed nowadays with the other games that are further down on this list. Despite this, I still have a great bit of love for Popful Mail. Popful Mail is a side-scrolling action RPG developed by Falcom and localized by Working Designs. Originally released on Japanese PCs, Popful Mail found new life on Sega's CD-based system in 1994, where its colorful visuals, fast-paced gameplay, and humorous storytelling made it stand out. It did a good job combining platforming, RPG mechanics, and voice-acted anime-style cutscenes for a truly special package. It is a little difficult, I admit, but it is ridiculously charming. The story follows Mail, a feisty red-haired bounty hunter who dreams of riches and glory, but constantly finds herself broke due to her bad luck and impulsive nature. When she hears about a massive bounty on the notorious wizard Muttonhead, she sets off to capture him, only to become entangled in a much larger conflict involving ancient evils, mystical artifacts, and an eccentric cast of allies and enemies. And that is my thing. That's not true. Along the way, she teams up with Tat, a young magician in training, and Ga, a strange winged creature with incredible strength. The trio's interactions form the heart of the game's humor, with plenty of sarcastic banter, slapstick moments, and Working Design's signature localization touch, which adds a bit more Western flair to the dialogue. Big surprise.
Who else but Quagmire?
Gameplay-wise, Popful Mail is a side-scrolling action RPG where players can switch between Mail, Tat, and Ga on the fly, each offering distinct abilities. Mail is a melee fighter with a sword, Tat uses ranged magic, and Ga is a powerhouse with strong attacks but limited range. The ability to swap characters in real time adds a strategic element to the game, especially in boss battles where different characters may have advantages based on whatever situation. Progression involves collecting gold, upgrading weapons and armor, and uncovering hidden gems. Nope, sorry, that's not the right word. That's now I owe Metal Jesus Rocks $1. Progression involves collecting gold, upgrading weapons and armor, and uncovering hidden items, giving it a light RPG feel. If there were more games like this on the Sega CD, I'd definitely make a separate, almost RPG for it like I did for the Super Nintendo, but we gotta include it in this one because there's not too many RPGs on the Sega CD anyway. Combat is simple, but ultimately, hey, it works. Players time their attacks carefully while avoiding enemy strikes, and that's about it. The platforming elements can be tricky due to the game's stiff physics, making precise jumps and dodges difficult. Enemy encounters encounters are frequent, and while they drop golden items, the high difficulty can make progress feel slow, especially early on when characters are underpowered. Some areas require grinding for better equipment to stand a chance against tougher foes, and that's a common trait from Falcom's earlier action RPGs. The game's visuals are among the best on the Sega CD, featuring some vibrant anime-inspired character sprites and detailed backgrounds. These might be the best cutscenes on the Sega CD from this list. While the voice acting is exaggerated and comedic, it suits the game's lighthearted tone. As an example, consider this point.
Hey, are you blind or something? Up in the tree, you dunderhead.
Say, can you give me some help here? Like, today?
Right out of the gate, this guy's asking for help, but he's gonna berate me? I'm the one that can help you, and you're giving me attitude?
Well, stay here and rot, you stuck-up bitch.
The soundtrack, composed by Falcom's legendary sound team JDK, delivers a mix of energetic battle themes, catchy town music, and atmospheric dungeon tracks. The music's good enough that I found myself humming some songs for a while after playing. The difficulty is often unforgiving, with some bosses feeling unfairly punishing. The frequent backtracking and occasional need for grinding may frustrate some players, but the grind is something I personally enjoy. Of course, Working Design's got their dirty little mitts in the code and made the enemies more powerful just to, I would argue, artificially increase the difficulty. But here we are.
Who else but Quagmire?
I really hate that they did that so often. That's a knock on them from me. I love them, don't get me wrong, but I'm a little mad. Despite these issues and despite coverage over the years, Popful Mail is still sort of a hidden gem in the Sega CD library. Oh, there's another $1. It's a mix of action, RPG mechanics, humor, and high production values, and it makes it a standout title for fans both of platformers and of RPGs. Though its difficulty and control quirks might deter some players, those who stick with it will find a charming and rewarding adventure that is as 90s as Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon! I don't know why I passed on this next game for so long. I just kept overlooking it. I owned it at one point, and I sold it before I even played it. Maybe that's why I put it further down the list, is because I underestimated it so much. I'm talking about Vey. Vey is in the best and worst sense an absolutely traditional turn-based RPG. For me, it's the best sense. Released in 1994 in the US, it was developed by Sims and published by Working Designs in North America. Vey seems to aim to provide a classic fantasy experience with the added benefit of animated cutscenes and voice acting. And if that's the goals, hey, it's on top of it. The story follows Prince Sandor, heir to the kingdom of Lorath, whose wedding day is shattered when mysterious robot war machines invade, destroying his homeland and kidnapping his bride, Lady Ellen. Left with nothing, Sandor embarks on a journey to recover the legendary Vey armor, a powerful artifact from an ancient war, in order to fight back against the invaders and rescue Ellen. Along the way, he gathers a party of allies, each with their own motivations, as he uncovers the truth behind the war machines and their connection to an ancient evil. While Vey's plot follows many traditional RPG tropes, fallen kingdoms, chosen heroes, and a mix of fantasy and sci-fi elements, it is well paced. Big surprise, the game also benefits from fully voiced anime-style cutscenes. A rarity for RPGs at the time, maybe not so much for the Sega CD at the time. These cutscenes add personality, of course, and a bit of spectacle to the story. The English voice acting is a mixed bag, ranging from solid performances to over-the-top deliveries, a hallmark of, Working Designs. The translation itself adds humor and charm, sometimes deviating from the original script in ways that might feel out of place, but they add personality to the characters. That's what Working Designs does.
Who else but Quagmire?
The game includes random encounters, a world map to explore, and towns filled with NPCs offering clues and side conversations. Battles are pretty straightforward, much like the game. Sandor is a balanced fighter, while others specialize in magic, support, and physical attacks. The difficulty curve can be steep, with sudden spikes that require heavy grinding to overcome. Enemies hit hard, and without careful resource management, players can find themselves overwhelmed, especially in dungeons where healing items are limited. One of the game's biggest drawbacks is the encounter rate. It's not quite beyond the beyond, but it's not far from it. Random battles occur frequently, sometimes interrupting exploration too often. Combined with slow battle animations and grind-heavy progression, this can make Vey feel tedious at times. Fortunately, the game provides an AI auto-battle option, and it does pretty well balancing between healing and attacking as necessary. I think it was this one that does that correctly. I hope so. Hope I didn't lie to you there. Let me know if I lied to you. Visually, Vey is pretty decent for a Sega CD RPG with colorful character sprites, well-designed enemy artwork, and atmospheric towns and dungeons. However, it doesn't really push the hardware in the way that other Sega CD games like Lunar the Silver Star did. The animated cutscenes are the real graphical highlight, making it stand out a bit further. Otherwise, it looks like a typical 16-bit RPG. The soundtrack, of course, as you would probably expect, is solid. Making a use again of the Sega CD's audio capabilities allowed this game to have high-quality compositions, making the soundtrack stand out among other 16-bit RPGs. at least on the Sega CD. If you like classic turn-based adventures and don't mind tropey stories, you're almost guaranteed to enjoy V. Just don't begrudge it for not being Lunar or Phantasy Star. Hey, if you're still around, it's likely that you're enjoying this content, folks, and I would certainly appreciate a sub and a like if you can find it in your heart. I have a lot of RPG content on my channel already, and there's more coming down the pipeline. So if this is your shtick, welcome aboard. Thank you so dearly for your support. Let's continue. Lunar, the Silver Star. If I say Lunar a few times, forgive me. Released in 1993 in the US for the Sega CD, Lunar, the Silver Star is an absolutely legendary RPG developed by Game Arts and published by none other than Working Designs in North America. As one of the defining titles of the Sega CD library, it blended a heartfelt coming-of-age story with charming characters, anime-style cutscenes, and a fantastic soundtrack. Later, Lunar would be remade for the PlayStation as Lunar, Silver Star Story Complete, featuring significant changes to the gameplay, story, and presentation. While both versions are beloved, the Sega CD original holds a unique place in RPG history and stands on its own merits. I had not played much of the Sega CD version until recently, though I adore the PlayStation 1 version. I have to admit, I think the Sega CD one is about equal. Maybe that's blasphemy to some, but it's good. It's so good. The story follows Alex, a young boy from the quiet town of Berg who dreams of becoming a dragon master like his hero, Dine. Accompanied by his childhood friend Luna and his little dragon thing Null, Alex embarks on a journey to prove his worth by meeting the 4 dragons and earning their blessings. Along the way, he encounters a diverse cast of allies, including the Jack magician Nash, the drunken Chad warrior Kyle, and a kind-hearted but firm healer Jessica. However, their adventure takes a darker turn when they uncover a sinister plot led by the powerful sorcerer Galleon, who seeks to reshape the world in his own image. Gameplay in Lunar the Silver Star follows a traditional turn-based RPG format with some unique twists. Battles take place on a tactical grid, though you can't see the grid. Characters move automatically to attack enemies based on their placement. While not a full-fledged strategy RPG, positioning plays a role in how battles unfold. Characters might get multiple attacks and moves in a single turn if they're not too far from enemies. Dungeon exploration is straightforward, featuring some simple puzzles, enemy encounters, and hidden treasures. One of the standout elements of the Sega CD RPG, like Dark Wizard, is the presentation. Listen, there might have been some absolute turds on the Sega CD, but it apparently knew RPGs. The game has fully voiced cutscenes, which is of course impressive for the early 90s, and while the voice acting is rough in some places, it's so bad that it's wonderful. I think this just adds to the game's personality, and it's a trip down nostalgia lane. The anime style of cinematics are to die for. Even after loving the PlayStation 1 cutscenes, I still love these. The soundtrack composed by Noriyuki, oh my goodness, here we go. The soundtrack composed by Noriyuki Awadari is a master, it's such, this guy. The soundtrack, composed by Noriyuki Awadari, is a masterpiece, featuring beautifully orchestrated tracks that add to the emotional impact of the story. The Sega CD's capabilities allow for high-quality Redbook audio, making the music stand out even compared to later versions. Despite me absolutely loving the intro to Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, even to the point that I had the soundtrack in my car, this opening song is an absolute banger, and it's one I'll be adding to my playlist for the drive to work. The PlayStation 1 version is all about excitement and wonder of adventure, and this one certainly drives home the necessity to go, save the world. It feels urgent and epic in just the best ways. The PlayStation remake, Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, made major changes to the original. The story was rewritten with new dialogue, additional character development, and expanded lore. Some characters, particularly Luna and Galleon, received more backstory, making their motivations clearer. The cutscenes became a little more anime-like as well. Some fans argue that the Sega CD version retains a pure, more old-school RPG feel. Here's a weird thing, the difficulty in the Sega CD version is supposedly higher, but I can't help but feel that the PlayStation 1 version is harder. Maybe I'm just crazy. I mean, granted, I haven't played completely through the Sega CD version, and I've played through the PlayStation 1 version multiple times. Either way, Lunar the Silver Star remains one of Sega CD's finest RPGs. While the PlayStation version refined and expanded many elements, the Sega CD original stands as a classic in its own right. And I think I have to admit, it is as good. And that doesn't seem to be that big of a hot take. From what I've read of player reception on my channel and forums and such, players who appreciate classic RPG mechanics and don't mind a challenge will find a rewarding experience in the original version, while those looking for a more polished cinematic experience may prefer the remake. Either way, Lunar is a must-play in either of these forms. Play it. Here's something else I really kind of hate to admit. So many people over the years have been correcting when they told me this. I just didn't want to believe it. Despite my protests, despite my protests of many years. You know what I found out is better than Lunar the Silver Star? Lunar Eternal Blue. Released in 1995 for the Sega CD, yeah, basically on a dead system, Lunar Eternal Blue is the ambitious sequel to Lunar the Silver Star. It's just better, I'd argue, across the board based on what I've played of it so far. Developed also by Game Arts, Eternal Blue refines nearly every aspect of the original, delivering a longer, deeper, and more emotional journey that cements it as one of the greatest RPGs of its era. With its stunning anime cutscenes, rich world building, and engaging battle system, Lunar Eternal Blue could be considered the crown jewel of the Sega CD library. It's just quality. Set 1,000 years after the events of the Silver Star, the story follows Hiro, a young adventurer with dreams of exploring the ancient ruins scattered across Lunar. Alongside his mischievous, talking cat-like companion Ruby, Hiro stumbles upon Lucia, a mysterious girl from the Blue Star who has come to warn of an impending catastrophe brought by the sinister Zophar. This meeting sets off a grand adventure filled with peril, romance, and self-discovery as Hiro and his allies fight to protect Lunar from destruction. Compared to the Silver Star, Eternal Blue expands on nearly every gameplay element. The turn-based combat system retains the tactical positioning mechanic. The biggest change is the magic experience system, where you have separate experience points that you can pump into spells to make them more powerful. Think of it like a super simple skill tree. The difficulty in the Japanese version was apparently a little rough, so working designs on the US release, believe it or not, balance things a little better. That is wildly out of character for them. They did, however, add the cost of magic points to save the game. What? Come on, folks, this is why we can't have nice things.
Who else but Quagmire?
Visually, Eternal Blue takes full advantage of the Sega CD hardware, offering some of the best sprite work on the system. The characters are expressive, the environments are vibrant and varied, and the battle animations are more fluid than in the Silver Star. However, the biggest visual draw remains the anime cutscenes, which are longer and more detailed than before, bringing the world and characters to life in a way few RPGs of the time could. Here's an interesting tidbit. The original had about 10 minutes of voice cutscenes. Eternal Blue has almost 5 times that. From emotional character themes to powerful battle tracks, the music enhances the storytelling and atmosphere perfectly. The voice acting, while limited due to hardware constraints, adds extra charm to key moments. The characters of Eternal Blue are lovable and well developed. The romance between Hiro and Lucia is heartfelt, and the game's emotional moments hit harder than in its predecessor. And apparently, the ending is also an incredible one. Please, no spoilers, folks. I actually haven't finished this game, and I'm looking forward to the remake coming out. I intend to finish the Eternal Blue remake as soon as possible, and I want to enjoy every moment of it. Playing the Sega CD version of the game has got me absolutely hyped. From my experience, it's really the sort of cream of the crop for the Sega CD, proving just how impressive CD RPGs could be, and how much potential there was for the future of the media and medium. If it's so impressive, why is Eternal Blue not the last game mentioned on my list? Surely this is heresy. Well, yeah, Eternal Blue is probably objectively the best RPG on the Sega CD. But I ordered these games and the ones that surprised me the most, and I intend to stick by it. I have 2 more games coming up, and you may not believe the last one. For now, though, let's match quality and quality. That brings us to Shining Force CD. Shining Force CD for the Sega CD is, yet again, an awesome entry in Sega's beloved tactical RPG series. It gave us a refined and expanded experience based on the 2 Shining Force Gaiden games originally released for the Game Gear. Developed by Sonic Software Planning and released in 1995 in the US, Shining Force CD takes those portable adventures and enhances them with improved visuals, remastered music, and a more seamless interface suited for the Sega CD's hardware. Some suggest it lacks some of the RPG elements of the Sega Genesis standard, but I actually just don't know what it's missing, honestly. If you do, let me know. Maybe they're suggesting that the lack of talents or whatever takes away from it. Whatever. I don't know. Let me know, for real. The game is set in the Kingdom of Cyprus, some years after the events of the original Shining Force. Queen Honoree of Guardiana has been kidnapped, and a new generation of heroes, descendants and apprentices of the original Force, must rise to rescue her and thwart the emerging evil. The game is divided into 4 books. The first 2 are direct remakes of the Shining Force Gaiden games for the Game Gear. Videos on those RPGs coming up soon, right? While the 3rd and 4th serve as bonus content that expands the story with additional battles and character development. At its core, Shining Force CD retains the turn-based tactical combat that made the series so enjoyable. Battles take place on grid-based maps where players control a variety of characters, each with unique classes, abilities, and attack ranges. The gameplay follows the same intuitive system as Shining Force and Shining Force 2, with characters leveling up, gaining new spells and abilities, and eventually promoting to more powerful classes. However, unlike those titles, Shining Force CD removes exploration and town interaction, instead presenting the story as a linear series of battles with brief cutscenes between them. While this makes for a more streamlined experience, it also means that some of the charm and world building from the mainline games could be lost. I personally don't think I really mind. I was relieved to not have to run around and superficially talk to NPCs. I love the combat in these games, and I find that any story that uses the combat engine to tell it is absolutely compelling. Visually, Shining Force CD certainly improves upon its Game Gear origins with detailed character portraits, which are absolutely beautiful, refined sprite work, and smoother animation. While it doesn't push the Sega CD hardware to its limits, the enhanced presentation makes the game feel more in line with its Genesis counterparts. The biggest upgrade comes in the form of the soundtrack. The CD format allows for beautifully arranged orchestral style music that elevates the experience far beyond the chiptune limitations of the original versions. Each battle theme is grander and more immersive, making combat feel even more intense. One of the few drawbacks of Shining Force CD is the lack of save functionality during battles. Unlike Shining Force 2, which allowed mid-battle saves, players here must complete each encounter in one sitting. If you're emulating, this isn't a big issue because, save states. But this can be frustrating in longer battles, as a single mistake late in the fight can mean starting over from the beginning. Additionally, the lack of town exploration may leave some players missing the RPG elements that added depth to previous entries, but I simply don't care. Despite these minor issues, Shining Force CD is a fantastic strategy RPG that gives us classic Shining Force gameplay in a polished package. The story may not be as deep as the Genesis counterparts, particularly the fourth book in the game, but the tactical combat, memorable characters, and incredible soundtrack make it worthwhile. For fans of Shining Force and strategy RPGs, this is one of the best reasons to own a Sega CD. As a testament of how fun I found this game, I immediately started looking at prices on eBay afterwards. I can't afford it, but whatever. This next game isn't perfect by any means, and you may argue that it's not even a Sega CD game, but it absolutely rocketed past my expectations. I kept going back to it and back to it because the gameplay loop was just so enjoyable and so addictive. Maybe it was just the right time for me to discover Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Eye of the Beholder. Eye of the Beholder for the Sega CD is a late-era port of the classic first-person dungeon-crawling RPG that originally debuted on MS-DOS in 1991. Developed by Westwood Studios and published by SSI, the game was one of the defining computer RPGs of its time, absolutely nailing atmospheric dungeon exploration. As you and I can probably imagine, it might have been better on MS-DOS and crap on a console, and that was my initial assumption. The Sega CD version, released in 1994 in the US, attempts to bring this beloved experience to console gamers. The game is set in the iconic Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms setting, specifically in the city of Waterdeep. A powerful evil lurks beneath the cities in the sewers and tunnels of the abandoned dungeon, and the Lords of Waterdeep have tasked a group of adventurers with rooting it out. However, shortly after entering the depths, the party finds themselves trapped, forced to battle their way through hordes of monsters, navigate deadly traps, kill countless families of kobolds, and uncover the sinister plans of the evil beholder known as Xanathar. Evil beholder, as opposed to the benevolent beholder, whatever. At its heart, or Eye of the Beholder is a classic dungeon. Such a dumb joke. Shame on me. At its heart, Eye of the Beholder is a classic dungeon crawler, featuring a first-person perspective and grid-based movement, and I did not want to play it, but we'll get to that in a minute. Players create a 4-member party from a variety of advanced Dungeons & Dragons classes and races, each with unique abilities and stat distributions, or you can just go with the default, which is what I did. Character creation is faithful to the tabletop rules, allowing for deep customization, though the interface on the Sega CD can be a bit cumbersome compared to the PC version, so default it is. We eat our mac and cheese and we enjoy our vanilla candles and we move on. The gameplay revolves around exploring maze-like dungeon floors, solving puzzles, and engaging in real-time combat. Unlike turn-based RPGs of the era, Eye of the Beholder uses a pseudo real-time battle system where players must issue commands quickly, clicking on character portraits to attack or cast spells. This can feel awkward on a gamepad compared to a mouse and keyboard, but it's manageable after some adjustment. I personally actually came to like it. It was sort of fun being like on Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer, on Vixen. The biggest challenge comes from managing limited resources, as spellcasters must memorize spells before resting, and supplies like food and healing potions are scarce, like really scarce. Personally, I'm aware without intervention that I am constantly dying in real life. I am constantly starving to death unless there's some intervention. The trick is I repress that. I put that down. You know what? I gotta live life. This game, however, is like, you are dying. You are starving. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Kind of shoves it in your face. That's all right, I guess. The soundtrack of this game is often lauded, and hey, I can see why. But ghetto blasting bangers while you club some skeletons feels pretty good, actually. The game's visuals, despite having been on PC, remain largely unchanged from the original, meaning that the graphics may look dated compared to some of the more visually impressive RPGs of the time, but I was impressed with this game's visuals anyway. If you don't don't have a Sega mouse, a Mega Mouse or Mega Drive or Mega whatever, if you don't have a Sega mouse, the Sega CD port relies entirely on button presses and a slower, more cumbersome interface, which can make some actions, especially inventory management, feel a bit tedious. However, holding down the start button and using the direction pad causes you to turn. You don't have to click on the screen buttons. That's pretty solid quality of life. I went into this game dreading it. I knew I had to play it, but I'm just not typically a fan of this sort of interface dungeon crawling thing. But it is certainly growing on me thanks to this and Shining in the Darkness. I found this game really difficult to put down. I knew I had to play more RPGs on the Sega CD, but often I just load this game right back up and try to inch my way through the next level of a dungeon. I want to carve out time in my life and finish this game one day. It is, for me personally, the definition of a hidden gem. There you go, Metal Jesus, take another $1. It was a bit of a Sam I Am sort of moment, right? Like, I didn't like green eggs and ham, and here I am. Sam. Maybe it was the point-and-click stuff, or maybe it was the weirdly engaging combat and sense of danger, or maybe it was the sadistic joy I felt from slaughtering families of kobolds. Actually, yeah, that's what it was.